Afternoon, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying our virtual conference so far. This is a lunchtime rally that we're having, the Road to May 2021. And I'm just going to say right from the outset that if you've got soggy sandwiches, it's not my fault this time. You're not in a conference room, so you can't blame me for your nasty dinner. But I have got a fantastic lineup of speakers, and I also think that they're probably trying to give me an initiation test as the new chair of the party, because they've given some of our brilliant speakers of our movement only 3 minutes, and in order to get through everybody, I've got to ask them and beg them to stay within their 3 minutes, and I apologise for that because you've got a superb lineup. It's like Glastonbury for politics, what we've got here today. So I'm not going to speak for very long. You've already heard from me once this morning, but I am going to thank everyone for joining us. Thank every one of our councillors, activists and those of our representatives that have been looking after our Labour brand and doing everything they've done through this virus and through this pandemic. And I want to start, and it is an absolute great honour of mine to introduce Mark Drakeford, the First Minister for Wales. And I think that actually his measured and thoughtful approach has been in stark contrast to Boris's bumbling incompetence during this awful crisis. And in Wales, our Welsh Labour government is a beacon of our values and the difference we make when we're in power, and a true Labour government working in partnership with the Labour movement. And that there's no better one to tell us about all of this than our First Minister. So it's over to you, Mark.
Angie, thank you very much indeed. The road to 2021 is like no other. Next May's elections will be dominated by the sadness and sorrows of coronavirus, the lessons we learn from it and the future we fashion. Here in Wales, a Labour government knows that as the crisis hit, it has been the collective effort of social solidarity that has bound us all together. That we get through because of the daily dedication of those who have housed the homeless, worked in our schools when the pandemic was at its height, who've kept the lights on, the water flowing, and the food on our tables. And of course, those who put themselves at risk for others in our care home, surgeries and hospitals. For us, the road to 2021 is paved by public services, not private profit, by social partnership, not division and confrontation. And here in Wales, all that is shaped by the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, a Labour Act in which everything we do today is tested not simply against its impact here and now, but what it means for those who come after us, and a future for them that is created through the practical actions of bread and butter socialism, a future of social justice, economic justice, and environmental justice for all. For 20 years, the Labour Party has won the trust of the people in Wales. Trust that your concerns are our concerns, that the things that matter to you are the things that we stand for in Welsh Labour. On the road to 2021, we have to earn that trust again, to win every vote we are privileged to have cast for us, to show that the hardship and damage of coronavirus can still be a catalyst for profound and lasting change. A radical agenda for these radically different and difficult times, assertive in standing up for the hard-won rights of devolution, but working too for a successful United Kingdom. Angie, with your help and with the help of Keir, Nia and the fantastic Labour movement, the road to May 2021 is both a journey but also a destination to which we dedicate ourselves, a destination which is fair and which works for us all. Diolch yn fawr.
Oh, well, Matt, what can I say? Not only have you shown us the difference that a Labour government makes, and it's an absolute pleasure to hear from you, but you've also shown what discipline you have and has made me look like an absolute excellent chair. So I hope the rest of our panel are able to show that as well. And now it's a pleasure to go to our next speaker and introduce our leader in Scotland. Let me say that Ian Keir will be relentlessly focused on working alongside Richard and the Scottish Labour Party, and to compete against the divisive nationalism and put us back in the driving seat in Scotland, because everyone everyone needs us to win in Scotland across the whole of the United Kingdom, because that's the only way we're going to kick the Tories out of power in Westminster and make our country truly socialist and looking after everybody. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Richard Lennon, our leader in Scotland. Richard.
Angela, greetings and solidarity from the Scottish Labour Party. The COVID pandemic has laid bare the weaknesses of our care system, but it's also exposed the fragilities of our economic system as well. And both have reminded us about the deep-seated inequalities that exist in our society. We know that the impact of the virus, the unemployment that it has already caused and it will cause in the future, is not evenly distributed. So the 2021 Scottish Parliament elections are our opportunity to offer the people our plan, a plan for dealing with the pandemic, for dealing with the unemployment crisis that we will face, for dealing with the intense pressure our public services will be under, and for investing in a just and green recovery, housing, energy, care, infrastructure, environmental restoration and transport. Our bold plans for investment would create over 130,000 new jobs. But we cannot wait until next May. We need action to save jobs now, because in Scotland, oil and gas jobs are going. Tourism and the arts are decimated. Nighttime economies are closed. Our high streets are in peril. Aviation, aerospace, hemorrhaging jobs. Entire industries are under threat. And we have an unemployment rate which is the worst of all the UK nations. Now, everybody knows that the pandemic and the recession will not be over by the end of October. The Chancellor has hinted this week that he's been forced into a U-turn on the withdrawal of economic support, possibly by way of targeted schemes. So my call today is, if support is to be targeted by the Chancellor, I'm calling for a Scottish targeted scheme that properly takes into account the requirements of the Scottish economy. At next year's election, Scotland faces a double threat: an SNP that wants to separate Scotland from the UK, and a Scottish Tory party doing Boris Johnson's bidding, whose Brexit betrayal is the single biggest threat to the United Kingdom. It is only the Scottish Labour Party that will deliver the people's priorities, to address the public health crisis, to tackle poverty and inequality, to build the homes we need, to give people dignity in retirement and a national care service, to reverse the rundown of our public services, to put Scotland's economy on a different path, to make full employment a central goal of public policy, to put people and planet first. And it is only the Scottish Labour Party making common cause with all people who share our goal of a better society, of an economy that works for the people rather than people simply working for the economy, that will deliver it. Ours is a vision of hope in place of fear. It is a bright vision of the future in these dark days. And it is a vision of the future which is worth fighting for.
Richard, thank you so much for that introduction and showing us what we can do when we work together with our nations, with Mark in Wales and with yourself in Scotland and in England, to make sure that we all come together, defeat this virus, but not just that, have aspirations for the future of our United Kingdom together, not divided. So I'm really pleased that you was able to join us. And now nobody knows the bumbling legacy of Boris Johnson better than this person, who has actually transformed and shown what a united country and what a multicultural great city we have in London. And that's our fantastic, amazing London Mayor, Sadiq Khan. Sadiq, over to you.
Thank you, Angela. It's great to be speaking again at Labour Party conference. The lineup of talented national, regional and local Labour leaders speaking today, who've won elections, run Labour administrations and done incredible things for the people they represent, make me feel hugely optimistic about the future of our party and the future of our country. Keir, Angela and the whole of the shadow cabinet, a new leadership, have done an incredible job putting our party back on the path to forming a Labour government, a mammoth task. And they're doing it under the most difficult circumstances imaginable. That's why I think they've earned the gratitude and support of every Labour member and everyone who needs a Labour government. Friends, it's a cliche that we're living through unprecedented times, but we truly are. This is a year like no other, a year in which we've all suffered a profound trauma. Our lives changed beyond recognition. Families and communities left grieving for loved ones. Countless businesses in jeopardy, and thousands of people losing their jobs or furloughed, anxious about what tomorrow holds. Extraordinary times like these call for extraordinary actions by extraordinary people. And make no mistake, the people of the UK have been extraordinary throughout this crisis. The frontline workers who've taken unimaginable risks to keep us safe. The nurses, carers, and NHS heroes. The bus drivers, teachers, and transport staff. The council workers and police officers. And the posties, shop assistants, warehouse workers, and delivery drivers. To the overwhelming majority of people who've done the right thing and follow the rules at every step of the way. Thank you. The British people have been truly extraordinary. But unfortunately, and it gives me no pleasure to say this, we've all been catastrophically let down by the government. If ministers had risen to this moment as the British public have, then the loss of many lives and much of the economic hardship could have been avoided. These times called for a government that could put ideology, dogma, and ego aside and calmly and competently do whatever it takes to save lives and jobs. Unfortunately, we got the exact opposite. Just when we required a steady, capable hand on the tiller, we've had a hapless government that keeps on steering us onto the rocks. As a result, the UK has suffered the highest excess deaths in Europe and the deepest recession of any major economy. I'll repeat that. The highest excess deaths and the deepest recession. This isn't an accident or coincidence. It's not a quirk of geography or weather. It's happened because of the sheer incompetence of the government. We've had the dither and delay in implementing lockdown, the shameful failure to protect our care homes, the absolute fiasco over testing, the total lack of understanding that you can't tackle the economic crisis without first tackling the health crisis, the refusal to extend the furlough scheme to protect jobs when every other major economy has already done so, the push towards a disastrous no-deal Brexit at this moment of all moments, regardless of the consequences, the threat to break international law by voting against a bill that they heralded just months ago. And by the way, we're now bracing for a second wave, but still without a functioning test, track, and isolate system. Incompetence, incompetence, incompetence. Astonishingly, last week, my Conservative opponent in London called the government's response a spectacular success. Well, if that's success, I dread to think what failure would look like. But you know what? It didn't have to be like this. And I truly believe that if Labour was in power today, it wouldn't have been like this. Labour is now the party of competence. We've made the right calls at the right time throughout this crisis, telling the government what they needed to do, if only they'd listen, calling for lockdown while ministers delayed, begging them to prioritise testing from the very beginning, pushing them to make face masks mandatory while they dithered again, and telling them to involve local government leaders in the response who've been sidelined at too large a cost. Friends, the elections on May the 6th will be the first opportunity for the British people to send a message to this government that we've had enough. To let Boris Johnson know that we'll not let him off the hook for causing the highest excess deaths and the deepest recession, and to hold the government responsible for holding our great country back with its incompetence. So from now until May, let's work harder than ever before to get people to vote Labour, because we can do better than this. We must do better than this, and we will do better than this with the Labour Party under new leadership led by Keir Starmer and Angela Rayner. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sadiq. And I'll let you go over because I think we're all inspired by the leadership that you've shown as the Mayor of London. And you quite rightly articulated that you stepped up to the plate when the government didn't, and was leading the way to keep Londoners safe and was pushing for that support that people needed. And I want to thank you for that leadership and showing that actually what Labour does when we've got power. And speaking of leadership and what Labour does when we're in power, I've got to say that another mayor is, all of you are wonderful mayors, by the way, and wonderful candidates, but this is my mayor of Greater Manchester. So he's brilliant and he has shown leadership actually. And, you know, Greater Manchester has faced a real challenge of its own uniquely. And I think we all know that Andy's been there giving the real story of what it's like on the ground and quite rightly holding the government's feet to the fire. So Andy Burnham, I'm so proud that you're the Mayor of Greater Manchester. I'm proud to introduce you today.
Oh, thanks so much, Angela. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I need to say first that on behalf of everyone here in Greater Manchester, we're so proud of you, one of our own, taking the Old Etonians on the national stage. You did a brilliant job at PMQs and you gave a brilliant speech today. So yeah, we couldn't be more proud of you. And actually, wonderful to be in this Glastonbury of politics lineup this morning. I think we're all very honoured. Unlike Glastonbury, I think everyone who's spoken so far is sober, as far as I can make out, which actually makes this rally a bit unlike one we would normally have at Labour Party conferences. Clearly, that wouldn't be the case there either, like Glastonbury. But Angela, the question is, what do we need to do to win? Well, I will say, keep doing what we're doing. I see a brilliant leader, deputy leader, a strong shadow cabinet, effective PLP, asking all the right questions in a national crisis. I feel very supported, and I'm sure I speak for other leaders, local leaders on this call as well. But of course, we've also got Labour councils supporting communities, doing amazing things across the country to take people through this. So keep doing what we're doing is the first thing that I would say, and keep exposing a Conservative government that is ideologically and instinctively incompatible with the moment that we find ourselves in. They privatise when they should localise. They put the interests of big business before health, so we go late into lockdown. They aren't in touch with people, otherwise they would have acted much sooner on our calls to give financial support for people on low pay who are struggling to self-isolate. And I think what we can do here is just expose also how levelling up is supposedly the central theme of this government, but it's slowly being exposed as a myth. We've been levelled down this year. They're putting communities under local lockdown in the north of England with no support at all. That happened in Bolton just a couple of weeks ago. People's jobs affected, but no help for them. And Angela, please promise me this. Please, all of you in Parliament, never, ever, ever let it be forgotten that they were ready to sacrifice the futures of working class kids up and down this country this summer by giving them the wrong A-level results because they were going to put grade inflation, managing it before social mobility. Never let it be forgotten that that is what they were prepared to do. And that is what a government that says it's in favour of levelling up will actually do when the real moments like that land. So I'll finish, Angela, by saying it's Labour that now needs to lead and win the levelling up debate. You know, we've got an opportunity here as we build towards May 2021 to reconnect with our red wall and begin to set out how we will rebuild it. And we need to blend the best traditions of our party, don't we? Keep the radicalism of recent years, but blend it with a new realism about what Labour needs to do. You know, that's where we are at our strongest always, when we're unified, but also when we're bold. And you said this morning that this is a moment to be bold. Labour, like we did in 1945, comes back with a plan that is about restoring this country coming out of this pandemic. A national care service, as Richard said, but also fair, good employment for everybody. Let's build a new generation of zero carbon council homes. Let's make this Labour government that will be coming soon the equivalent of the Labour government in 1945. That's how we will win. And we start next year in May 2021. Thanks so much, Angela, for everything you're doing. Pass our best wishes on to all of the party in the Shadow Cabinet. And let's keep going where we're going and doing what we're doing, because we're winning. Thanks.
Thanks, Andy. And you're absolutely right. And that road to a Labour government in 2024 starts in May and is crucial for us to get that elections in May 2021 up and running and for us to win. And you were absolutely right when you say they privatise, the Tories privatise when they should localise. And that is absolutely true. And we saw that. And coming to the north again, another part of the north, what we need is our Tees Valley Metro Mayor candidate elected, because that will make such a huge difference over in Tees Valley. And I am absolutely proud to introduce another firebrand northern woman that won't take no for an answer, Jessie Jo Jacobs. Over to you.
Hi, Angela, and hello to my Labour Party family from here in the Northeast. And this conference is definitely, it's a battle and a presentation of ideas, but also of bookshelves and home decor. Listen, I recently spent the day with some Northeast fishermen, hearing their stories of their past, their love of their job and the joy of the sea. But the real sadness was the reality of a barely surviving industry, destroyed by an economic model that favours the big and the global. I've spent time with a potter, her story the same. I'm currently fighting to save an old blast furnace to keep our memories of industry alive. But the jobs that it once housed are gone and are unlikely to come back. And as I go onto the high street, all I see is decline. Local shops battling to compete with the global giants and eventually closing their doors. And don't get me started on overcrowded housing, overworked workers, underpaid, struggling schools. And yet the Tories' idea to fix this is more of the same. Zero tax, zero regulations, privatisations, sell off more of what we own to global business like British Rail, BT and Test and Trace, Serco, because they're getting it right, aren't they? No, they're not. But an alternative is deemed foolish, an enemy of progress, of industry itself. The market is king, the Tories say. Well, I've got a message to them. When Labour Party was born, our ideas were deemed foolish. Ideas for health and safety in the workplace, ideas for children to be cared for by the state when they were in need, to care for our elderly. Listen, we achieved more than we could have imagined. We got a welfare state. We have health and safety protections at work, anti-discrimination laws. But we can go further. We must go further, and this nation is ready for us to go further, because at our heart, this nation cares about each other. It is compassionate. It looks after its children. Look how we stood together during this COVID crisis, how the millions of people volunteered with mutual aid groups. We stood together in communities. We sung and we clapped on our doorsteps. Everyone pulled together, making sure no one was left behind. No one was lonely, because this is who we are. This is Great Britain. And there will be a temptation to go back to the Tory way, to return to individualism and survival of the fittest, a denial of society, divide and conquer, working harder and harder, too busy to see our children grow. to stress to enjoy the simple things in life, but we won't let it, for it is time. We will be the party that leads us in to a new tomorrow. This is how we will win in 2021 and beyond.
Thank you, Jessie. And it is the energy that you bring and the passion that you bring to Tees Valley. I just know that when you're elected in May next year, we're going to have such a fantastic voice in the North East, working with us in the North West. And speaking of fantastic voices, not just a veteran of our armed forces, but a veteran of politics in general, of working for the people as a great public service, not just as a member of parliament, but being a voice for the Sheffield City region. I'm so proud to introduce our next speaker, and that's Dan Jarvis.
Thank you so much, Angela. Great to see you. And thank you to everyone tuning in, and to all of those, of course, who've organised this fantastic conference under really challenging conditions. Look, we all know we're meeting at an unprecedented time during the worst health and economic crisis in living memory, in a still divided country amid a growing ecological crisis. If we're going to tackle our problems, I think that we need to stand for a common good, if necessary, against the demands of the most powerful and the most wealthy. Simply put, that is why this government will ultimately never do what is needed, and why we need Labour in power at every level. And as the late great Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, we must fight for the things that we care about, but in a way that leads others to join us. And to do that, I think that we need three key messages. First, in a time of crisis and contraction, we will ensure public health is protected, jobs are saved, and sacrifice is fairly spread. As the government squanders its credibility, we will act like a government in a time of crisis. Secondly, people don't want to return to business as usual after COVID. So our vision must address our deepest challenges. That's why here I've been working on a renewable plan for South Yorkshire and a new deal for the North, both designed to bring fundamental change to our economy and create a stronger, greener and fairer future for all. Short term or long term, we, and it is only we, can deliver what people need to live in dignity: meaningful work, decent pay, affordable housing and world-class public services. Finally, we need to talk about power. Angie touched on this with her inspired call recently for key workers to stand as local councillors. Who better to represent their community than the hospital nurse or the bus depot shop steward? But that also fits into a wider vision. The UK is more centralised and more regionally unequal than any comparable nation. We will elect councillors and mayors next May into a system which gives them too little power and too little resource. And from the way we vote to our second chamber, our system is increasingly unfit for purpose. The dysfunction and resentment that it breeds threatens all our hopes for a progressive Britain. So, to win next May, we need a credible plan for Britain after COVID, one that addresses people's lived experiences. But we also need an answer to the disillusionment and the division that long predate this pandemic. That includes a deeper, more coherent devolution, a restructured union, a stronger democracy. That would resonate with the electorate, but also with us and our values, because what could possibly be more Labour than bringing power to the people? In these times of crisis, we need to show that we don't just want to change outcomes, we want to change the system. So stay safe, look after one another, and let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And, you know, listening to all these speeches, the one thing that just keeps coming back in my mind all the time is this a Tory government are holding us back? The amazing work that's going on at a regional, at the nations, and looking at the work that's going on at a local government level, you can just see how much we'd be able to achieve together if we had a Labour government, and I'm itching to get at that. And you know, one of our greatest leaders in local government, who leads the Local Government Association, is our next speaker, who has been on the front line fighting in the North East and across the country, working with our superb local councillors to make sure that Labour is able to deliver in local government, I'd like to introduce my amazing friend, Nick Forbes, the leader of the Local Government Association. Nick, over to you.
Thanks, Angie, and thanks everybody for being part of this amazing rally this afternoon. Next May, we have thousands of council seats up for election around the country. And those council elections matter more than ever as we come out of the public health crisis and the economic crisis that we're now in. Over this summer, we've seen two different types of Britain. We've seen the far right marching and mobilising in our towns and cities. But we've also seen decency, fairness, compassion and collaboration in spades. Those are the Labour values that we need to make sure are taken into our country at large as we emerge into the elections next year. And that's why Labour councils and Labour councillors matter more than ever, because through this crisis, we've swept aside the barriers that have kept us from doing the right thing and just got on and delivered for our communities on the ground. But we also know in politics, as a hard truth, people don't reward you for what you've done. They judge whether you're capable of taking responsibility for their future. And we need to demonstrate competence, relevance, and give people hope. So compare and contrast the Tory Domini shambles that we've seen, a Prime Minister who will be out of his depth in a puddle, with the work that Labour councils have done to deliver PPE where it's needed in our care sector, to keep our schools going, to protect the vulnerable, to take our homeless people off our streets and give them safety and security, and to protect our businesses. There is no doubt that Labour demonstrates competence where Labour is in office locally. And we, like our councillors and leaders, we've walked alongside our communities, holding their hands when they stumble or where they need that extra help. We need to be relevant. And then we know that the Tories are trying to create culture wars to drag us into distractions that plays to their advantage. Let's not let them take that political ground from us. We know that we need to focus on the issues that are important to people in our communities. Jobs, a good environment, a decent home, security. These are the things that matter to people, and these are the things that we need to make sure are the core of our election strategy next May. But we also need to offer hope for the future. The Tories want to turn the clock back. They want to make things as they were. But we know that COVID is changing our communities faster than ever. It's changing our towns and cities faster than ever. It's changing work patterns faster than ever. It's changing how we spend our leisure time faster than ever. It's changing the world of work faster than ever. We can't resist that change. What we have to do is embrace it and make sure that we pave the way to that future with Labour values. And that's why we need to make sure that we have a vision for a fairer society, one which is more equal, one that tackles inequalities, and one that is based on moving towards a zero carbon economy, creating jobs in the new sector of green collar jobs to replace the jobs that we're losing in other parts of the economy. Those are the things that we want to do. And every Labour gain that we make next May, whether it's a Labour councillor, a Labour police and crime commissioner, or a Labour mayor, is a step towards creating a better future for everyone in our country.
Thank you, Nick. And I'd just like to say again, thank you to you and all the other councillors who do such a fantastic job on the front line. And where we've seen the Prime Minister and the government differ and delay and act too slowly, we've seen our councillors up and down the country, out on the front line, being swift, being quick, and doing what they need to do without fear or favour, looking after the people they're there to represent. And Nick would agree with me that he doesn't stand alone, like Keir Starmer, our leader, doesn't stand alone. He has an absolute fantastic, great deputy at the Local Government Association and a person that I'm proud to call a friend. And I think this person needs no introduction, but she's absolutely tremendous. And I'd like to give it over now to Councillor Annette Bramble, the Deputy Leader of the Local Government Association.
Thank you to our fantastic Deputy Leader, Angela Rayner, or more of us know her as Angie. I just want to commend the leadership of Kia and you and the Shadow Front Bench and us as a party to rebuilding the just trust of the public. I know the elections are 4 years away, but we don't have the luxury of time. COVID has exacerbated the inequalities within our society and has shone a light on all of those challenges, but it's also shone a further light on this dismal government and their failings time and time and time again. We often talk about rebuilding the red wall, but there's a red wall outside of Westminster that's often forgotten, and that is local Labour government. Councils up and down the country have been taking actions. They have been insourcing to preserve frontline services. They are keeping libraries open, children's centres open. They are helping the vulnerable. They are making sure that people in their local communities get the resources that they need. So it's really important that the next elections next year are elections that we fight and stand up for like no time in the other. Let's build that red wall, the red wall that is between the Tories and our communities, the red wall that is between austerity and cutting the services that our residents need, the red walls that are the difference between cuts to services or investment in our communities. Now is the time more than ever in those elections next year. Now, the government said they will do whatever it takes to stand with local government. Well, them standing with us left us with a billion pound bill in services. Let's show them what it really means to do whatever it takes. Let's get out next year in those elections, whatever campaigning looks like, to ensure we get more Labour councillors in office, more Labour administrations in office. Why? We need every opportunity possible to show our communities what it looks like when we have Labour in power. We've been doing that and we need to do more of that. So we need you, our members, who are our biggest asset. It's you out campaigning, it's you helping stand with us that will make all the difference. And I'll end with this, Angie, by saying, we need Labour in power, because when Labour is in power, communities are in power. When communities are in power, people are in power. When people are in power, they have more as a community, not to just survive, they get to thrive. And that's the aspirations that we have for our local people. Thank you, Angie. Keep doing the great work you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Antoinette. And not only that, she's reminding us what you could do in a speech with 3 minutes. So absolutely barnstorming and absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much. It shows actually that deputy leadership is great leadership and can really complement our Labour family and the engine room of getting things done. Now, speaking of engine rooms, there's a Midlands bit of the UK, which has always been the industrial heartland, as well as Manchester, of course. But somewhere where Keir was yesterday, I think he stole our leader yesterday and was out and about, and will make a fantastic Metro Mayor for the West Midlands. Our next speaker is an absolute gem of the Labour Party and will be an absolute gem of a Metro Mayor. And it's an absolute honour to introduce Liam Byrne.
Angie, thanks so much. And I hope everyone watching this can see that 227 days ahead of the election, our grassroots of our party has probably never been stronger. And frankly, next year, that sets us up well to deliver on, I think, what is a historic task, which is to make sure that from all of the agony of loss, from all of the pain and sacrifice that we have been through this year, there comes change. We know, because we're on the front line in places like here in Birmingham, that the COVID crisis has not hit people equally. One of the hardest things I have ever done in public life is what I've done over the last 3 or 4 years with our inquiry into why COVID fatalities were so much higher in our ethnic minority community. The stories that I have heard will stay with me for life. Like the mum who gave birth to her little baby and died from COVID before she could ever hold that baby in her arms. Like the woman who was married to her husband for 50 years, found out that he had 24 hours to live by text message. Or the kids that said goodbye to their dad as he went to work, never to see them again. After all of that pain and sacrifice, what the British people deserved from their Prime Minister is a plan to save lives and to save livelihoods. Instead, what have we got? We have got a plan that is hazy and a Prime Minister that is lazy. So it falls on us next year to bring people together with a plan that makes a difference. Not satisfied with dicing with death and this ridiculous testing system that they are trying to run, the government has chosen this moment, as Sadiq said, to start playing Russian roulette with a trade deal with our biggest trading bloc. Now, that creates a risk next year that not only do we have lockdown, but we have lockout from our biggest single trading market. That would be catastrophic for jobs here in the Midlands. Now, I didn't learn Latin at the comprehensive school that I went to, but I tell you, if we have no deal and no vaccine, if we have lockdown and lockout, I think 2021 for many people will be what the Latinists call an annus horribilis. That's why our task next year is so important. That's why we have to trade on our greatest strength, which is that Labour is the community party. And if there's been a silver lining over the last 5 or 6 months, it is that resurgence in community spirit. The people who are running the food banks, the people doing food deliveries. And we have been the people with our sleeves rolled up, packing those bags, delivering those bags, making sure the people in our neighbourhoods were okay. Now, what we have got to do is come back together with communities next year, over the next few months, to make sure that we have a plan for real change in the years ahead. In the West Midlands here, we've got activists who are delivering 350,000 direct mail letters. The survey sort of results are kind of coming in thick and fast right now. And what we can see there already is an agenda for change that is not only rich in potential, but plausible to deliver. Not only radical, but realistic. It's a plan for us to go green and create jobs. For us, that means becoming the capital of green manufacturing. It's an ambition to create new ladders for our young people, transforming frontline mental health services, putting youth workers back into every neighbourhood, making sure that our young people don't leave school and go into some kind of wasteland where unemployment is sky high. And above all, it means making sure that the communities that we serve stick together. We know that communities that stick together are stronger and safer. That's why we took Keir Starmer to the Bescot Stadium in Walsall yesterday to demonstrate how important community anchor institutions like our football clubs are doing such incredible work bringing communities together. That is the kind of tradition in which we were formed. That is the kind of tradition that will power us in actually delivering change in the years ahead. So look, the Tories are under bad management. We are under new management. And that new leadership has the promise to provide a new future for the communities that we serve. So look, Angie, the ideas that we are hearing about today, these are ambitions that we can turn into action by pulling together to win those elections in 227 days' time.
Thank you, Liam. And, you know, already the West Midlands are already seeing the fruits of your labour, and you're not even elected yet to be the West Midlands Mayor, Metro Mayor, but you will be elected the West Midlands Metro Mayor because the Midlands deserve better than what they've got at the moment. So I know you're going to make such a big impact on the ground there. And as soon as I can get there, I'll be there again to support you. So thank you. I'm going to move swiftly on because we're a bit running low on time to Jamie Driscoll, who's North of Tyne Metro Mayor candidate. And Jamie, I know you're going to smash it there as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. It's not 4 years till the next election. It's 228 days. The British public are enormously generous. I'm sure, like me, you're all on the doorsteps clapping for carers. In a time of crisis, people pull together. They get behind the government and look to those in power to keep them safe. But we have been betrayed. Prime Minister who couldn't be bothered to attend 5 consecutive COBRA meetings. Chief advisors throwing people under the bus in a policy of herd immunity. A health secretary promising us world-beating test and trace by the end of June. Record levels of incompetence matched by record levels of contempt with Dominic Cummings' famous eye test. And incompetence has been followed by nepotism and corruption with billions of pounds awarded to friends of the Tories without any public scrutiny. Might be a new Prime Minister, but this isn't a new government. They're past the sell-by date. and they're destroying livelihoods and bankrupting councils and are responsible for the deaths of over 20,000 people in care homes. That's not just grounds for voting them out, that should be grounds for a criminal trial. We've had 10 years of austerity, libraries closed, Shoe Start defunded, homelessness up by 169%, millions of people using food banks. But where Labour's in power, we fought back. Steve's work improving transport with Merseyrail, Andy's work eradicating homelessness in Manchester, Dan's work in Sheffield planting 1 million trees to combat climate change. The thousands of well-paid unionised jobs My Green New Deal is creating in the north of Tyne. Because that's how we win back the Red Wall. We stand up for our people, we offer hope and we deliver on our promises. Like Newcastle's Race Net Zero, Gateshead's groundbreaking anti-poverty campaign, making sure that no child goes hungry. Sunderland Council paying the real living wage to all of their staff, whether in-house or contracted. Every key worker we clap for deserves a decent pay pack. So I'm excited for May to see Jessie become Tees Valley Mayor and put families at the heart of the economy with affordable childcare, to see Liam building those eco-friendly council homes in West Midlands. 228 days. Who knows if we'll be able to door knock. Party needs to get us meeting online, talking about politics, building our social media reach, unleashing our creativity. More than ever, this needs to be member-led, where everybody gets 10 people in their street to sign up for a postal vote. Mayors, national and council leaders on the platform today, but just like in our society, it's members and branch and CLP officers who are our key workers. We stand together because we believe in hope. We believe in a better future. And we all want to see that smug smile wiped off Johnson's face when we sweep the boards in May. Solidarity.
Oh, thank you, Jamie. And thank you also to reminding us that it's May. That's when we get to tell people what we think of what these Tories are doing in our areas, and we can make a real difference. So people, and we're going to hear more about that over the next couple of days of how people can get involved in the campaigns. I'm certainly all geared up. This has been great because it has felt a bit, you know, sluggish at home. We all want to get out there now and get moving. So without further ado, another candidate of ours for Police and Crime Commissioner in Durham is Joy Allen. And Joy, I can't wait to come up there and help you and make sure that you're elected in May as well. So over to you, Joy.
Thanks, Angela. Obviously, as a Police and Crime Commissioner, I was really disappointed that the elections were postponed in May. But I think the postponement has presented some real opportunities for candidates like myself and the party to look at some new opportunities to engage more purposefully with our members, supporters and communities. If we've learned anything from our defeats, it's the importance of connecting with and representing our Labour supporters and members in villages, towns and cities. Digital democracy has been one of the positives to come out of COVID. It's enabled our regional leaders, our shadow cabinet and candidates like myself to engage with members in conferences like this today. And it's been really revolutionary having that connectivity between the centre, the regions and the local. This conference today will probably go down as the most inclusive conference that Labour Party has ever done, and allowing Labour supporters to attend conference from the comfort of their own home, without the travel, without the expense. And as you will see throughout the conference and today, the Labour Party is uniting. From the regions to the centre, we're all committed to working together, supporting each other and listening to what matters to members and residents. With many areas like ourselves in the North East on a temporary lockdowns, this is an ideal time to mobilise our members, to reach out and engage with our communities, to let them know about the forthcoming elections, the importance of registering for postal votes, and encouraging them to get behind the local candidates and their campaigns. May 2021 isn't that far away, but we have an amazing opportunity to win back seats and administrations and rebuild the mighty Red Wall, winning back the hearts and minds of our members and traditional Labour supporters, as well as winning the support of new voters like those in the coast and country. We know from experience we have achieved what seemed impossible in the past. As someone who was there when Tony Blair was elected in Newton Aycliffe, when we achieved the landslide victory, the impossible is possible. The fight back has started, and I hope everybody who's attending conference this week will help us and win big in 2021.
Thanks, Joy, and what a great speech, and showing us actually why you're such a great advocate for your area in Durham. And I'm really sorry that we weren't able to be at the gala in July, but hopefully we'll be there again soon. And I can't wait to see you elected as the Police and Crime Commissioner for Durham. So in May, that would be great. Next speaker is, we won't talk about football because we'd be here a long time and I'm already out of time. But this guy is an absolute fantastic legend in the Northwest and over the river from me, but he'll never walk alone. It's our city, Liverpool City Mayor, Steve Rotherham.
Thanks, Angie. Shame conference isn't here at my home city as it was planned to be, the home of the Premier League champions, but the weather is glorious as well, so you're missing out. What do we need to do then to win the 2021 elections first and then beyond? Well, I think it's incumbent on every single one of us to make that emotional connection with our voters. And we all did that recently when we did clap our key workers during the height of the pandemic. And it was a genuine outpouring, a reconnection with our NHS and recognition of those key workers. So that means we have to talk to people in a language that they understand. And sometimes we're guilty, aren't we? All of us are talking in millions and billions. And when it comes to Tory deficits, trillions. And we sometimes talk about think tank concepts. What we need to do is to return to the bread and butter issues that affect voters' daily lives and have the answers to their questions. Explain, for instance, why there are fewer buses in many of our communities compared with a decade ago, why it's so difficult to get on the housing ladder, why our local authority areas have had their budgets slashed by the Tories for over 10 years, how we achieve full employment, how we address climate emergency, and how we maximise opportunities during the green industrial revolution that will follow. There's millions of other areas that only Labour can tackle. Now in December, we lost badly, but not in the Liverpool City region. We returned 16 out of 17 Labour MPs, and I'm proud to call all of them colleagues and friends. But we can't ever take votes for granted. We saw that breach of the Red Wall, and as a bricklayer, believe me, I'm prepared to help to rebuild it. But we need to ensure that no one is left behind. So have a campaign that's not a targeted top-down campaign playing off one set of voters against another, you know, the ABC ones or the C2DEs or whatever they are, but a concept that everyone can get behind. And it's a vision for me of a Liverpool City region where we can give hope. And that's what we were doing, Angela, over the next few months, whether it's remotely, whether it's enabled, virus going and knocking on doors, hopefully. But we'll be fighting for every single vote in the 6 boroughs that I represent, and we're having local elections as well as others, including the Police and Crime Commissioner. And we need to do that right the way across the country, because the last 2 sets of local elections haven't been great for us nationally. So we need to turn that tide, because the country is crying out for a change. It's crying out for a Labour government. It's crying out for Labour Metro mayors and Labour councillors, and the fight back starts here.
Thanks, Steve. And thanks for reminding us that actually people are not codes or numbers. And that in Liverpool, we know that the reason why it's absolute kryptonite to vote Tory is because the good people of Liverpool City know that the Tories were the ones, they remember Thatcher, who wanted to write off the whole of the city, and they'll never, ever let the Tories forget it, and quite rightly so. And the Labour Party has always been the home for Liverpool City, and I'm so pleased to hear from you today. And you also spoke about the kick in the teeth and the gut-wrenching feeling that we all had in December when we didn't win. And one of the heartbreaking moments of that night was when our candidate in Pendle, our next speaker, didn't win, because he's a good friend, a great advocate as the leader of the Labour group in Lancashire, and an absolute great cricket fan as well. But our next speaker, it's a fantastic Azhar Ali.
Thank you, Angie. It's great to be on this platform. In Lancashire, we've seen years of chaos and confusion, very much in line with what's going on nationally with Boris's government. The Tory County Council is definitely not on the side of local people. They've been busy cutting crucial services affecting older people, young people, and the most vulnerable in my community. Not once have they stood up to Boris and asked for more money, or stood up and asked for more support. Even though in recent weeks and months we've been hemorrhaging jobs in the aerospace industry, they've just stood on the sidelines. The only priority the Lancashire Tories have is to try and postpone the local elections next year, so they can have a costly diversion in the form of unitary authorities, so they can hang on to power for another couple of years. But we're not going to let that happen. We're working with the party to make sure that we do go ahead with elections next year, so we can, as an alternative, put together a strong and very different agenda for the people of Lancashire. So next year, we're going to have a manifesto that's built from the bottom up, working with our 10,000 members in Lancashire, working with TULO and our affiliates. And we're going to have a strong agenda to rebuild our communities devastated by Tory cuts. We're going to have a radical jobs agenda with green jobs at its heart. And we're going to invest and invest and invest more and more in our deprived communities that have been hit so hard in recent years. And we're going to invest in our skills and our jobs. But more importantly, what we want to do is I want to work with Andy Burnham and Steve Rodham in the North West, working together to create a stronger Lancashire and a stronger North West. But the only way we can do that is by winning hearts and minds back, as Steve said. And we're really working hard with all our candidates who've been selected, and with the support of yourself, Angie, and the regional office, to make sure that we can deliver for Lancashire, because we need a new deal for Lancashire. And the only hope that people in Lancashire have is a Labour County Council working with the Labour Party to win next general election. Thank you, Angie.
And also reminding us of the links to national government, region and local, and how that is how we'll deliver for the people of Lancashire and the people across the United Kingdom. So thank you so much for the work that you've been doing. And next, our next speaker, again, from the great city, great place of Bradford, not far from myself, is the Councillor Susan Hinchcliffe. So Susan, over to you.
Thanks, Angela, for that introduction and for your rallying call to our party. So I'm a Labour leader at a time of a national crisis in local government. I've seen at first hand how important it is for the right people to win elections. We are by our nature partisan. We want Labour to win. But this time it's not just about our team winning. It's about the fundamental good of the future of our country. And we're suffering massively from health inequalities, which have been writ large by the glare of COVID, caused by too many years under Tory rule, and a shrinking of the state, which means the safety net has holes too big to be useful anymore. So in the midst of this crisis, Labour in local government are delivering. We're feeding people. We're protecting people from a virus that kills and disables people. And at the same time, we're subsidising public transport for young people. We're providing skills programmes for long-term unemployed and affordable housing programmes. Now, in May, there's many elections across the country, as we've heard. Here in West Yorkshire, we'll have our first election for our first West Yorkshire mayor. Now, it's a Labour-led devolution deal, which has been negotiated by the 5 West Yorkshire Labour leaders. So we've got to get a Labour West Yorkshire mayor, because other than that, we've got such a massive ambition and hope for our future. Beyond COVID, we want to deliver net zero carbon by 2038, inclusive growth where we eliminate those health inequalities, and a bus system where we take back control. But we need a Labour mayor to deliver that. Please preserve us from a Tory mayor. So we must all play our part to win and talk to our friends and neighbours, and when it's safe to do so, campaign. But let's win for the good of our nation, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan, and we'll all be working hard to ensure that we deliver that West Yorkshire Labour mayor that we need. And actually, one of the things that will help with that is the record that you have as a leader at Bradford, and what you've been doing shows actually what Labour does when we're in power and the difference that you make. The next person to speak is another deputy, another great deputy of the Labour Group Association, Local Government Association, and that is Michael Payne. So Councillor Michael Payne, over to you.
Thanks, Angie, and thanks for your barnstorming speech this morning, and thanks to our inspirational membership for coming together to show what new leadership can achieve for our country. 280,000 people living homeless last Christmas, 4.3 million children living in poverty, 60p in every pound cut from local public services, the biggest rise in UK poverty since Thatcher was in power, and 6 food parcels being given out every minute in the 6th richest country in the world. That's the Tory record, that's the Tory legacy, and that's what we must beat at next year's May critical elections. This is a Tory government of go-home advance, the hostile environment, and accusing people with differing views to them of being saboteurs in their own country. It's a government marked by incompetence and marred by intransigence because of right-wing dogma. This last few years have been deeply challenging for our country and devastating for our communities. It has also revealed the government to be the incompetent shower we always knew they were. Their bumbling response to this crisis has highlighted that next year's elections are about 2 competing visions for our country: hope versus fear, unity versus division, compassion versus callous austerity, the many versus the few, and yes, competence versus incompetence. Next year's elections are an opportunity to guard against a return to business as usual. It's a moment where the "it's not my fault" government can hide no longer. We must send a message loud and clear that their incompetence has cost lives. The amazing Ruth Bader Ginsburg taught us, speak truth, even if your voice shakes. So let's unite, organise, mobilise and win to provide the much needed new and competent leadership for our country and our communities.
Thank you, Michael, and I can't wait to get out there campaigning with you and with our members, because you're absolutely right when you put the stark contrast before what we offer and what we currently have in the Conservatives. So I can't wait for us to make that point for May 2021. Our next speaker, unfortunately, I should have been at a wedding recently, but that wasn't meant to happen. Hopefully she will get to say I do in the near future. But at the moment, she gets to be our Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumbria, and she's doing a cracking job up there. And she's the great, the mighty Kim McGuinness. Over to you, Kim.
Oh, thank you, Angie. What a cracking speech this morning. It's a little bit different to the last time I saw you having fish and chips in South Shields, but never mind. It's a shame we're not in Liverpool, which is my 3rd favourite city after Newcastle and Sunderland. Every time I think back to the 2019 election, the thing that rings in my ears is that bit where Boris said he was borrowing the votes of the people in the Red Wall and in the solid Labour areas. And one thing that we can be absolutely sure of is he has fundamentally failed to deliver for those that lent him the vote. And so we need to get back out there and make sure that those people know that it's us that are here for them in their times of trouble. It's us that are here for them and understand what they're going through. In the North East, as we've already heard, we've been plunged back into temporary restrictions because of COVID. And through this, we've been given absolutely no support from government. Parents are being asked to care for their own children despite the pressure of still having to go to work, despite the fact that Nick and other council leaders across the region told the government that that was not good enough. Our testing capacity is absolutely woeful. Our police have been asked to enforce more and more and more rules without any additional funding or any additional resources, and it simply isn't good enough. But it's us, it's Labour PCCs, Labour local government, Labour MPs and Labour mayors who've been out there with the people on the front line, understanding what we need and telling the government what we need, telling them where we need the funding, telling them where we need the support. To them, recovery is all about the economy. All they're thinking about is money. And actually, we know as the Labour Party, it has to be about so much more than that. It has to be about the economy, because that is important. It has to be about health, because we're going to dip in and out of this until there's a vaccine. But it fundamentally has to be about our communities. And it is us that understand that. When I think about COVID and its impacts, I've talked so much locally about how it impacts young people and my concern for young people. And the image that I go back to is that young lad who's grown up in deprivation, and he's been failed economically. He's been failed by the Tories because he's been kept in deprivation. He's been failed on a health front because his family are much more likely to get COVID or other serious health issues, and who are much more likely to have limited lifespans. He's been failed by the Tories because his education isn't likely to be good enough, and now he's being failed because there isn't the job security, and his chances of having a good quality job are worse than ever. And what this leads to is vulnerability. It's vulnerability to more poverty and a continued loop, but it's also vulnerability to crime, vulnerability to organised criminals who want to get in there and to get him involved in things that he shouldn't be involved in. And that's what Labour PCCs and Labour government are here to prevent. For far too long for me, the Tories have held the narrative on crime and policing. They're saying they'll come down hard, tougher sentences, and they want to take our young people who've come from deprivation and punish them for the crime that comes from vulnerability. But really, what are they punishing them for? They're punishing them for the deprivation that they kept them in. For the Labour Party, it's about so much more than that. It's about understanding our communities. It's about improving lives to prevent crime. It's about improving lives to make sure that we have better prospects. And now I think we've got a really good chance to do that. My PCC colleagues and I and the candidates have been working, and we've got some fantastic candidates. Joy will be so brilliant in Durham, and I can't wait to share this campaign with her. But we've been working with the Shadow Cabinet to mould that policy so that we can reclaim that ever important narrative on crime and policing and how that fits with our communities. And it's only in 2021, it's only by electing councillors and mayors and PCCs and then moving forward into the general election and having a Labour government will we achieve that fully. So thank you very much to everybody. I never thought I'd be on the main stage of Glastonbury, even if it is the politics Glastonbury. And I look forward to campaigning with you all in the future. And you're doing a cracking job. Keep doing it. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Kim, and thanks for reminding us that these criminals that are in power at the moment that break the law, that told us that they were giving us thousands of police after they'd taken thousands of police officers off our streets. So they robbed 20 quid out of our pockets and offered us a tenner back, basically. We know the real criminals and charlatans that are in power at the moment. And, last but not least, on the main political Glastonbury stage is a man, not Marvin Gaye, but Marvin Rees, who does a fantastic job for the people of Bristol and actually has made it his laser focus since being the Bristol mayor to make sure that every child in Bristol gets the best start in life. And I'm really proud to introduce our last speaker of this panel, Marvin Rees.
Thanks very much, Angie, and it's great to be on the stage with you all. Just from Bristol's perspective as a local authority leader, we often say that we have a fantastic story to tell to the outside world, to world-class universities, thriving creative sector. But in my city, 25% of children are living in income-deprived households. Every day, 20% of our kids are at risk of hunger. And we've set out as a city to tackle that, to get food out to hungry people, to tackle period poverty, to build affordable homes for people. And in the face of the challenges we've had, take on COVID as well. But I can say it's been incredibly difficult working with national government. It's exhausting. Not only do they not serve up certainty and the support we need, but they actually serve up uncertainty, which makes it all the more challenging. And it's very difficult to put into words just how absolutely dismayed I am. It seems to me when I watch the national leadership, it's a group of people whose ambition and entitlement has outrun their ability, and yet they have no ability to stop and reflect on who they are. But I think too, reflecting on these elections to come, I'm really struck about the stakes and just how high they are. In many ways, the election is bigger than the Labour Party. We are an indispensable part of what needs to happen on this planet, prioritizing ecology, climate, tackling inequality, building hope, driving aspiration, protecting jobs, and the rest of it. But this is huge. My fear is that if things go wrong, there will be very difficult to come back from this. If we allow the trends that are in place at the moment to continue, it'd be incredibly difficult for us to get back from this. So it's absolutely essential that we take a first step and send that message next May, that there is a different view, there is a different style of leadership, there's a different set of values that are waiting to step into leadership. On that point, I just think as well, I'd love to just stress the importance of us talking about leadership. We can see the contrast between the government and Keir and the shadow cabinet right now. And it's just, I mean, it's a world apart in terms of competence, getting on the brief, having integrity and sincerity. But let me just remind us that while by technically we're in opposition nationally, locally we're in power. The major cities of the UK, the regional mayors, and we are a demonstration of what Labour does in power. Getting homes built, protecting jobs. Even on the front of Brexit, myself and the core city leaders met Michel Barnier when we hadn't even had a chance to meet David Davis. So we're operating internationally as well. And let me just finalise, picking up on what Nick said earlier on. We've got to talk about hope. We've got to challenge and we've got to criticise, but we have to be talking about hope.
Thanks, Marvin, and thank you all. I mean, we have overrun on this session, but I don't care because actually we've had such inspirational speakers, and shows you actually that it's not 2024 that we need to keep a focus on for now. It's in the next 228 days in 2021 in May, when we're going to get the opportunity to vote in these superb candidates and people who have already been delivering, whether that's through our local government councillors, our police and crime commissioners, whether it's through our mayors, or whether it's through our government in Wales, or the people and our great representatives in Scotland. You can see our party is strong, our party is coming back, and we will be in power again very soon. So thank you everyone, all the panelists who have spoke today in this rally, this road to us getting back into government in 2024. Keep listening to what we're going to be doing over the next couple of days, and keep safe and keep well. Thank you very much.
Bye everyone. It was quite